Evangelist akwa baby. Part 4 of the wrath of God. Edi na Nyankopon se be ka kire.
Ye wura abakosem ebremu ewo Bible mu a. Ewo se ojidi ni biara. Etimi ehwe de ekoso. Na ode tutu Bible no bisa se ehina yedru. De na ekoso. Na de hu no ekire se ye wura Onyankopon ebufu bremu.
That's right.
Eno nti na mo hia se ye yesterday sua yi. Na ye twe a Christopher adwin esiso. Na fe anamon so so e wo se ye tuo na ebeboa ye so no yetimi ato enuanom fo.
That's right.
Ti e kan se Onyankopon bufo a na che se me bon tofa na enu no.
Okay.
Ye da omo ase. So mo nya ye ho abotra ma dwumadi ahya ase. Mo nkoso ara na mo dwumadi hu de wuru. Fi se da bia ye ka se yare na aba ninti no. Amma ka abontin nyamsem kan.
And that's right. Yekoye campaign, yekoye crusade. Ufiri ni parakroma or the COVID be in ho ano.
Abanso de abase. Sa dodo nkaboma setena no yentete so.
And that's right.
Yeah. Enti kwampa papa yebetimi abonyamsem kan ho de Europa ni de
Mo.
Enti utipi afro onua so bibi because onye TV ontie. Eti said the Noah or catch them components show by 20% kwadaka no. We be wadwuma.
That's right.
Ka we dey ka fufu so min tia say omontimi ehunu sa emaye. Ye da mo nyina ase. Right. Onyankopon bofu yaka enebeye empre 90 so na ye be ka.
That's right.
Na menkai ahwefo kakra menfoma dwen kwa chiri kakra na afi yemra nim. Ye kan ye say Onyankopon abufu anaso ahawmu so na wo edisa humamu no. Beba hyaase ewo kwan bi so sa kwan na be hyaase no eno ye kirem se Onyankopon mobro hu ene nadum ani ni
you want to me ba twa me kakra mamenkai adofo a ehwe program yi se de medi ka kan no ye WhatsApp line na the screen so a ubetumi se wo message bi asembise bi ana contribution bi towards the program up so send it at the bar ubetumi send it the abasoni ajebre wo bra dwumadi na ekona wie na ne ato ye bo ase yakenkan na kama at the amount na ye sha wo bo se program ayeye ne ene ne toto aso nyina no ye nka na se de wo pese wote no na mu ye kan se de Nyankopon asem esie nti ye ma watena se ye san ko evangelist o wabra o church nsemu at the evangelist.
Yes. Said na manogo so American. Onyankopon bofu eba adom ne mobro hu afram enti no yenhu de kosi se mobro hu no betwe ne ho.
Okay.
Na akabufu no nko a eno na ansa na manfo adwen ba se Nyankopon bofu na edru sa abre no a adwesakra ni hobby. Ebio omonche se ahyenso de wo Nyankopon bofu eho ne se de wo de hyaase Misraim ana de ba o Misraim no eno no ejina nkom hye so.
Okay.
Nyankopon ema Abraham enkom hye se nasefo ba kodi krobi so wo nkwaso mu na ombedi ho emfie ahanan.
That's right.
Na ebre no eso a odensa mu oden ne atemu be ba baji wo no na nsa mu odi na temu no ena wie ohaw musuo no eba Misraim force.
That's right.
Yes. Eno yaka ho abet ebia afi na obehwan ya eno wo Genesis chapter 15 13 to 16 most medikai etedu num chichemu do miensa de kosi dunsia.
That's right.
Oba yeye die mo eye ohaw musuo no wo di sem homanum so eno so ewo bra ye de hyase na be hyase so esa sem obrohu pram ntinu ya na nipa hu.
Okay.
Na hyase no ewo enkom hyantindinde bi achi de wo Daniel atwerenum etiri nwotwechemu eye eduna Daniel 8:14 eho na sa enkom hye no so no ewo se sa enkom hye no se wo sensene a ebewie 1844.
That's right.
1844 no na chese Onyankopon edinsan mu odin ebeje ne ma na no Bible kire se eye atemu ahyase sa atemu no na edi cemetery na nchechemu nsia ne nson no obofo no bo din se na atemu don edu.
That's right.
Yes, atemu don edu no eni Onyankopon bufu bra so enenam. Yes. On se ye do bi ko gina atemu ni mo na je se anye papa ebe boni mo baako.
And that's right. Tefrahwe ase. Wo mutu odaya.
Odaya sa. Enti no sa enete afesu so no ade baako ese nyame ma hye ne nso ne se onyankopon bofuo no ebe hye kakra wani mra ho so no na chese abeto enu bi na to Israel for no.
Okay.
Na enu bi anso na beto ye nsuso na ato ye wie ye kan me kan onyankopon bofuo a Bible hye ne nso edisem tredunum chichemo baako etredunsia chichemo baako Bible say enu no ye hwie gu ya sase so.
That's right.
Bible chirum pefi na ekura abofo nson emu nneoma ewo mu no na ye hwe ne mu sese hyase sisi wasase so ne ho sampa onyankopon bofuo ni Bible fra no atemu ewo this time etredunsia chichemo nsia ne nson the judgments of God odi for Ezekiel so ka ofra no onyankopon atemu boni ye say eye asotwe a mobrohu efra mu afei se onyankopon edi ni bufu ba odi kan ebo kokko no echa wiase no mienu womo a ebetie
okay
no mo edi na asem so no womo so a
ombeye asobrache
na se wiase
no mo ponsem no
sa na se wiase mo acha mienu anu
okay
enti na o ka kire Moses se ko on ka kire Pharaoh se Israel aye na bakan sa enti o ma ne ma ne nko som no wa ampene a onu so be na bakan efiri ho sa afei edru se nyankopon de oha musuo no egu Misraim fo so no on se odru Exodus 8:23 no kan se afei odi share betum on be hye ne manso sanso na Misraim fo so be hye omunso na efre no chi no oha no eba ebeba Misraim fo nkwan so.
That's right.
Sanso na oba pamfro no mu a ye wo abofo 9 a omukra asase mframa 9 no emu na abofo fro bi ene efiepo ye de ni kese tie mo se momo ha asase epo ne aso nua di kosi se omode
agina ye besisi nyankopon ko amoma so ansa.
Yes. Na kese wiase no mu acha mienu omo so ye ne sa no o kire se omo nya nipa 144,000 omo no Bible se omo ye achase form emakan.
That's right.
Said ye na Israel aye
onyankopon abakan
awo Misraim sanso na we mu so 144,000 omo so ye nyankopon amakan ewo agidifo nyinam wasase so.
That's right.
We mu ye atiasefo Israel fo na ebekọ Misraim no ye fa Joseph a wewo no ono pe ena omo fa ne nompe eso a ye gina ho ma se dachi agidifo a ewo Kristo mu no omo pie K9.
Oh, okay.
Omo kane ye atiasefo nko a sanso na tie 144,000 no enyom nko a na beko heaven ewufo ni beko Kristo mo ewufo beko.
That's right. So say ne maye tosumi no totrobento hyen a edikan no Kristo mu ewufo besori sa enti no 144,000 no eye atene for a womba yesu tie ama onyankopon awie ebrim. That's right.
Because say Kristo ba beto mo asase so
na che wom de Kristo be ba beto mo animu no so a wonka wuo nhwe.
Wom debi sa pepe.
Okay.
Yes. Sa ne sa for ne tie.
That's right.
Enti no bofo de kan bo kokko tino womo a ebetie kokobo no mo de so no womo na makọ wie sa 144,000 no womo a enti no Bible so mbenya abone gina hye the mark of the beast asem ne titia
emu betem yenu
sa enti no egusu sa no na Yakopon odi ne kokobo efam no obo wiase no kokko eni bufo ketinkiti no a ogem kakran je se odi boye nkokko na se Bible kan Amos atwere etre miensa chemu nson Amos 3:7 ba ko nso wo adwom aduonu enum Psalm 25 verse 14 on say Amos 3:7 no kan se Onyankopon onye biribi
just we yin trim patch edi atwere ne ko edi fo ansa.
Yes, nti ebe na Nyankopon ba hwie ne bufu egu asase so a on kan kire adem boni ben a yenim se ye wo ye boni mu nyinsa ye boni mu se de twere se kronkron ka no.
That's right.
Nso ono a no se do so do wi asenti on the no back na maye said your bagy na di wa nyina no ya dankwa enti no nadum ana ye di Yesu edi ti I ten afi de odi nyama be kam ye
David empire no so be yes
so no anso so say Ephesians 4 so say oma adoma chede odi masafo no sasafo no be kon kan na ye wie paye ba akomo Yesu.
That's right.
Na adoma chede no ba ko ye nkom hye enti ne etwase nkomhye no yete ase ti no kan say onye biribi ese di obeye no oyi ne tripo na di ekire ne nkwadifo.
That's right. Nkomhye nso ne bi no take on due advantage de enya nkomhye kra ne ye ka eno nso na me man so pe because Bible can say na di ekire nipa so be ne ye be kwa kotia na nsesem eno na nipa ni je ho
omo anya ne sanso nka Bible nsem kan say atodi po ba no na nka ama
kan shema
enti omo nyiro ho.
That's right.
Omo nyiro ho nya ne sa ne hu say Bible ka no kra fine enti omo hu say ebra Nyankopon odi osuo be say asase so Noah bro oka kire Noah said dem ye nie.
That's right.
Ha ye ko Sodom so oka kire no oka kire Abraham said dem ko akoye nie. Yes sanso na bra obeyi Israel from Israel no oka kire Moses.
That's right.
Said dem ye nie na de na ye de dru ye so a ye se ye de Nyankopon ka hwenkire ye
da bi da obeka
woni ba ya ne
obeboko kwa ansa
sa enti no o pese wonya baabi a obeti nsam ye firi de besi ewo twerese mu enye o maame na be ye onye papa enye no bi enkomhye na o Bible mu no o pese wo hu baabi a wo bekọ abanya mu nkyiremu a Bible maye ahyensode bi eye miensa na asori a mehu so mokuta sa ahyensode no eye ezi asori.
Okay.
Enti no me to ahwefo bia fo se me pa achew ko ezi asori anopa ade chichina ko okwa aka kiro nse de woti wo enye TV nwumre ni se asori no wa ahyensode miensa ba ko Revelation chapter 19 verse 10.
Okay.
Ba ko chapter 12 verse 17. Ba ko so chapter 14 verse 12 ni nyina Revelation membo biem
aye enso hyede a eda Nyankopon ma edi na asafo kita sa nso hyede miensa no
yes
memene da kwanhwefo asafo
Seventh-day Adventist Church ono mkuta sa nto kwa ko bisa wo se wote wonye TV se ye ka se asori no wa hyensode miensa.
Okay.
Ba ko wo Revelation chapter 19 verse 10.
Revelation chapter 19 verse 10.
Ba ko wo Revelation chapter 12 verse 17.
Okay.
And ba ko so Revelation chapter 14 verse 12. Asafo wi ase nyina no ezi pe na sa asendue ewo mo so.
Okay.
Na Bible say eye ediye nkomhye mu nkyiremu and what chapter 19 verse 10.
Okay.
Afi o san kyerɛ mo sɛ wo mo so na kuta Yesu Kristo mu gidie na omo de ni mransɛm so.
Okay. Hana hotelfo bo asetowo
na wadu 14
wana okita Onyankopon mransɛm ni Yesu Kristo adanse.
Sa enti so kasa hana hotelfo bo asetowo a Ghana ha obenye bi wiase ba bia obenye bi enti na meka ton so omo ko ezi menim sɛ wo memenda asɔre nketenkete benim wo ho. Yes omo yade enso so no oto kwan ko akyirikyiri a unya bi ebi ni ho ankasa.
Okay.
Eno nti na me pa mu aka kyerɛ nse monko ezi enne wo wiase afa na nyina.
Okay.
Sa se be abofo no kan se ahana bos ahotefo bo aseto wo no wodu kro bi eso a umenya bi wo ho.
Okay.
Na ba bo aye no kre.
Evangelist mama nkyem adofo ehwe yen se Evangelist Joseph Anane onte asɔre me nte asɔre nemu per research upon research awaye no en oda na didi akyerɛ sɛ asafo a aka wiase brem sisi ewo mu a mo kikita enso hyɛde Nyankopɔn de dan asafo ne no kora asafo na di no ekita wo mo de eye SDA church nti wo wakyinye bi wo question bi bisa na ewia me de number betudwa no afrɛ no obisa ndi nti a okasa Evangelist.
Fine. Afei se ebre beso ma Nyankopɔn ɔde ne bufo ebeba wiase a se bufo no hye ase a se na me de kankan no nyame ma no yehu ekira kwantem.
Okay.
Ebra Nyankopɔn bayi Israel be from Israel no se emframa mo sesae.
Okay.
Israel pokwa mane hunu nso no mu nim se omo bre na aso on se dru ba bi na is Misraim fo no ma Israel fo no ye dwuma den ye mom nhume na fe ko wi ase kra na se Israel ni ba bi obewo ayi ba yenkuno na omo misa se na afi yeti ha asomdwe mu afi ende na afi ye twi yesu sikan.
Okay.
Na nyina no mu misa so no mo bom pa se rade emo ono no mo nta Misraim fo so no mo ni se mo bre na aso.
That's right.
Sanso na nene chema Kristofo eno mahodo osisi a ya danse pa se enche na Yesu aba. Nso ye hu se Onyankopon o kasa kyerɛ se yenje si ye hu efise ye be free asase so.
Okay.
Na no ma o kan se ebesisi na aboye nkaye se onatemu ebeba wiye obehwe ne bofo asase so no o kan ho asem se ebi ye kom. yarewa kan yarewa je say san yade because of kind of pestilence.
That's right.
And obo krante na je say
ijinoma akon eni akosem. That's right.
So sa enti no wote say ekom aba and ekom edi brono bia ya na ye feel say osuo na anto na hwa na ya man nsuo to enu nso ya adefo
ono na ewiem nya ne sakrana
sa afi afi aframu yi say 2022 and the 2021 ebeko ebeye bosomi etoso nso no mu no asoye a ehwe wiase nua ne sem so ede nkaibo sem bi bai na mo kire mo say sima biara 1 minute biya nipa du baako ena ekom ekuwom ewo ya sase so every minute.
That's global report
on the by every minute sa enti omo tsan so hwe mu no je se edom awuwo no doso na no no esan se eye obroni meka se slow killer ekum ye boko no ya dwen maso
na anyi bum wiase ba bia ne mo akoye mmea enti no ya dwen amaso papa
ya dwen maso
okay
na de enti a to da bia yesa ne se nyankopon mobrohu efrem.
That's right.
Enti ekom ahase baabi na edi baabi fo no yen nyama so no na ye fa ho adwen se wadwen sakra bia na ye ne ntem.
Okay.
Fi se Bible aka se ye ti onyankopon na se di ni mransem so a obema osuo atoni brim.
That's right. No asaya asasa na yade
sa enti no ahwefo kan Ezekiel 14:12 and 13. No man kind Deuteronomy chapter 28 de minyanka obi an kan kosi ebwa nso so obi an kan kosi.
That's right.
Hono kutanhira ene no me.
That's right.
Na enoma ma ekom timi bantem no. Ye bebo video di kan pa video 1 na ye de akire mu.
Okay.
Yes.
Adolfo no se de me kan no na ye videos mako 12 a be yi de akire nsemu se de be ya beti ase no hu se enkom hye ebam na bibia kasem de actually intimacy production semwa crowd video 1 madaro mamuro mfamaye.
It sounds biblical, but as the world grapples with the COVID pandemic, the continent of Africa is facing another plague, locusts. As Nick Schifrin reports, the small insects pose a serious threat to food security throughout the region.
In East Africa, the air carries 2 plagues. Locusts, swarms with as many as 50 billion insects. As COVID-19 threatens the people, locusts threaten people's livestock and food.
They are being a menace, eating our grass and even getting into our homes. When we slaughter our livestock, we find locust faces in their stomachs. Without a doubt, they are affecting our health, our animals' health, and the environment.
In February, 8 East African countries experienced an initial swarm, the largest for parts of the region in 70 years. And now a new wave is 20 times larger than the first wave.
There are swarms that it's not uncommon to be, let's say, the size of Manhattan in New York City. So they can be very big. In one day, that swarm can eat the same amount of food as everybody in New York and
It sounds biblical, but as the world grapples with the COVID pandemic, the continent of Africa is facing another plague, locusts. As Nick Schifrin reports, the small insects pose a serious threat to food security throughout the region.
In East Africa, the air carries 2 plagues. Locusts, swarms with as many as 50 billion insects.
Adolfo no yesan emamo kwaba bio yakwa video no yebeko evangelist na mesro number egu screen so no memfre me se fra na momfre yese so wo message bia sending it through WhatsApp and I say SMS never brain yebeje brain na yakenkan e de ama evangelist we de eni nyan
aye ntutu mekeke na omo anu mwaba so mo free hin so mo free na bai obi emisa o omo banso so a se de papa ne ka no o se o mesi wo fu so a aduane a emwa ne adwe ne dako no o se nipa edoma wo California ene New York ye kom bomu a omodua no be ndako no ena moa no edi
itimi se no dako wow
the moyi atwamu a na so mode bosome ba ko wo ukuro mu a bisa se duan dodo se na be ka wo sa asase no so
that's right
na ye kan no so ka se omo obe 8 East African countries eye Kenya Somalia no Djibouti Ethiopia Sudan omo di afa ho enye honko omo de woni a kire ai Middle East
some be krana India ne ade omo
di afa ho akopi Russia
that's right
tini nyina no ede ekom eba sa me yebetimi aka bebre brenti ene ye boba ko yipa keke
that's right
tisi ankopon ka so beba kom aba enya ne den se o ma komba afei yemfa osua ntokrampo emmamu bi na enya no nko ye ka nioma Ezekiel aka ekom ye ba kom Yesu Kristo kan wo Lucas and Pam so the same thing
that's right
na afei oka esayare pestilences yembo videos eto aso no yemfa kire mu
okay production videos 2 to 9 wadaroma mu videos ni nyina mfa emaye.
The fear of flu was enough to divert a DC-bound jumbo jet today. A passenger from Germany complained she felt ill, and the pilots landed right away in Boston.
Runny nose, sore throat. We transported her to the Mass General Hospital.
Early estimates indicate the H1N1 strain is slightly more contagious than the typical seasonal flu, infecting roughly 1 out of every 4 people who live with a flu patient. Genetic testing, however, shows it is a less lethal strain than feared.
We do not see the markers for virulence that were seen in the 1918 virus.
That flu pandemic swept the world, killing an estimated 50 million people. Upon news of this outbreak, prescriptions for antivirals jumped 800%. And the government is spending $250 million to buy 13 million more courses of Tamiflu and Relenza. President Obama explained the move in a special cabinet meeting.
Even if it turns out that the H1N1 is relatively mild on the front end, it could come back in a more virulent form during.
Ebola is a disease that knows no mercy. This man is one of many affected by the outbreak in Guinea. But there are teams from around the globe who are on the move or on high alert to contain this current outbreak. Treating the disease is complicated because it's rare, it's contagious, and it's deadly. This is the first time Ebola has been found in Guinea. An added complication is that the disease is not only present in several remote areas in the country, but there are also numerous cases and deaths in the capital city of Conakry. The World Health Organization has been managing Ebola outbreaks since the 1970s. Once the disease has been reported, it triggers a global response. The IHR, International Health Regulations, provides a global framework for a collective effort in support of the outbreak response. Communication between WHO HQ, the Afro Regional Office, and the WHO Country Office in Conakry intensifies. The Global Outbreak Alert and Response Network, GORN, and other partners are alerted. Some contribute financially, some contribute supplies, others head to the outbreak site as logisticians, doctors.
March 2003. Panic grips Hong Kong as a deadly new virus sweeps through the city, one of the most densely populated in the world. The Amoy Gardens estate is sealed off after hundreds of residents contract severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS.
No one would come to Amoy Gardens. Even the taxi drivers refused to take people here.
Simon Say and his wife Rosa were 2 of the 1,800 people in Hong Kong infected with SARS. The highly contagious virus is thought to have spread from bats in southern mainland China.
I
was so scared at the time. I was consumed by fear because I'd always been very healthy before. When I was in intensive care, I felt even more scared. I couldn't breathe. Never in my whole life had I felt that I couldn't breathe.
Simon and Rosa made a full recovery, but SARS killed nearly 300 people in Hong Kong and infected 8,000 globally. The Prince of Wales Hospital was at the front line of the battle.
And SARS actually first occurred in Ward 8A. So the index patient came in on the 4th of March 2003, and within 2 weeks he infected 138 patients, including some healthcare workers.
David Hoy was one of the key doctors treating SARS patients, many of them his colleagues. He says health protection measures and personal hygiene have drastically improved in Hong Kong over the past decade.
We are now inside a double-door negative pressure isolation room, and you can see we have 2 beds side by side, but the bed-to-bed distance is at least 1 meter.
Microcephaly means being born with an abnormally small head, small in relation to the rest of the body, and it indicates that the brain may not have grown adequately during pregnancy. It can be caused by a number of conditions: infections, severe malnutrition, exposure to toxic chemicals. But we're worried at the moment that the new emergence of Zika virus, a relatively mild infection in Southern America, has been associated with infections presumably early in pregnancy, which have affected the growth of the baby's brains. In order to know whether your child has microcephaly or not, the first is you need to talk to your obstetrician or midwife who's caring for you antenatally, and it may be possible to do ultrasound scans later on in the pregnancy to look at the baby's brain and to look at measures of brain growth. But not all cases will be picked up in the antenatal period. Once the baby is born, of course, then the baby needs to be properly assessed.
Good evening. Just ahead of the spring and summer travel season, we got a sobering update on Zika today. The nation's top health officials warning that the Zika virus appears to be a lot scarier than first thought, spreading much faster. And the United States will soon be in the crosshairs, with the mosquito population taking off in the coming warmer months. The National Institutes of Health and the CDC issuing an urgent plea to Congress today to act now to pay for immediate steps to protect Americans. NBC's Tom Costello has details.
Tonight, a stark warning that the haunting images of babies born with microcephaly in Brazil, abnormally small heads and brains, are becoming a very real concern in the U.S.
Everything we look at with this virus seems to be a bit scarier than we initially thought.
The Zika virus is carried by the Aedes aegypti mosquito. Until recently, researchers believed it was found in just 12 states. The new estimate, 30. Further north than first thought, though that doesn't mean they'll carry Zika that far. Already, 346 Zika cases are reported all over the country, mostly from travelers who brought the virus home. And now, pregnant women living along the Gulf Coast are potentially at risk. Tropical disease expert Dr. Peter Hotez is warning microcephaly could ravage the region like Hurricane Katrina.
I'm very worried that in the areas of extreme poverty, in poor neighborhoods, in U.S. Gulf Coast cities such as Houston and New Orleans, maybe Tampa, that we are highly vulnerable to seeing Zika virus transmission leading to microcephaly cases.
Rachel Alarcon had always availed of the government's immunization programs for her children. Why not, she says, they're free. But that has not been the case for her youngest, who's just 5 months old.
I do trust our local health workers, but Dengue has me worried. My baby's healthy. I'm scared vaccines could cause problems.
Dengue is the world's first dengue vaccine. In 2016, the Philippine government launched a dengue immunization program that to date has covered more than 800,000 school children. But late last year, Dengue's manufacturer, Sanofi, warned that the vaccine could trigger severe illness among those who've never been exposed to the mosquito-borne virus. This caused fear and panic. But the health department says only 3 deaths so far can be linked to Dengue.
What we have now is a causal association, meaning it seems to be connected by the time frame, by the disease process, and what happened to the patient. However, to establish that actual cause, we just...
It's another day of work for one of America's top medical researchers. Starting with his 45-minute commute, Dr. Robert Gallo is still working hard nearly 30 years after his breakthrough discovery of the first retrovirus in humans, the one that causes leukemia. That work later led to the discovery of the retrovirus responsible for AIDS. He also developed the blood test that screens blood supply. 10 years ago, Dr. Gallo and 2 other scientists founded the Institute of Human Virology in Baltimore, dedicated to the study and treatment of HIV/AIDS. The Institute's goal is halting the epidemic. Dr. Gallo has been honored with more than 80 medical awards and 30 honorary degrees. However, when asked about what is used,
it has been 40 years since the first case of AIDS was reported, and since then, nearly 35 million people have died from HIV-related disease. Now, while there's still no cure, there's been great progress in developing treatments. Today, infected people only have to take 1 tablet a day. But HIV is still the leading cause of death of women of childbearing age, especially in southern Africa, which has the world's highest infection rate. I'll be talking to an activist about her life with HIV after this report from the Khayelitsha township in Cape Town, where one health campaigner is working to make sure people stay on their
videos na kokohwe na ye ewa edoso kakra nenso ebia wonte ase se na bible ani wam de videos we amane ewo honom enu nti na nyame akoa ete hanom ti ebekọ ne nchen no ato no bo ase a chirechim mako ede a chire events video ya se
oh emoda ho on se bible kan say ekom beba.
That's right.
As asuso besi miae yarwa videos e ebo no ekom ekoso videos na ebo no no ekoso oh senka ekom kwa na ekoso ma we nka ho de a ani obeka so enka nyankopo bufu na we de abeka busua no ho.
That's right.
Oh say ye de kan epo yare epegya wa America ye di ye shara ne de ho de ne shase.
That's right.
Ya na esi Ghana na se Africa omusio ye ni ehuni ene ye gya nsuo wo gotamu ma adore ntontom ne ho nkro ne ba omunya yare bi omankasa tudi H1N1.
That's right. Influenza.
Yes, omampen nankasa Obama sa abre no na wa friend cabinet meeting omodwe yade no omohun ba bi afiri bai oh yare ne ebeba ye hu e hyase kum nipa ansa ne yatodin sa na tie yenye to di wi a afi na ye behu sabio asase so nyansafo nso on be kiremu de ode yare ne bai e na senti ode yare ne bai on be kiremu.
That's right.
H1N1 bai no enu America enu so e san yade ti America bai bomodin so on be so anu na antene wiase.
That's right.
Entino e cherewa America ho kakra ekum kakra so no ho bo ho modin anya anu aduru
enam se nyame moburu hu fremu nti utimi nya ho aduru. That's right.
Nyanko moburu hu nti omofa mutiri di mu anso ho enu achi no yenya Ebola enu eba ebemem Africa nenso yare boni bia sese ekawa wache kra nansa
babi atokuru dawo ni pedua no bia ne moja firi ho ba na chese wo kwa no
enu susu ba ye no asoya ewo amanaman kabom kuo etifi ewo New York no amo asoya ehwe saa yade wo ni nipa yapom de nsensem so.
That's right.
Wo momra ba ko mo de adwuma ne se yade bi saa epagya wo kuro bi so a yenka humom ni yenko kuro no so ni yenko ko yade no wo ho.
That's right. Say they are entering we are men
o so ba no enti Ebola ba no America for to doctor eko eba Congo ebe kun yade no doctor ba ko kra de yade ne chi no omo sa de prem fa ntem ko America kwasa ne ekosa ne yade ko eso oba no beboa ma yade no ebia nkroso anko ba bia.
That's right.
Ani ni Ebola no enzo so omo bo ho moden a se ano abrass kra anya Congo nko eba Congo twam ko Guinea ba Sierra Leone ko Liberia Burkina Faso ni Ghana pe na amba because ebisi kakra bi fa Nigeria fo ho sa
ye
nyankopon na boa ye afei ba ko so ba to aso a ye fa ne SARS severe acquired respiratory syndrome eno no Taiwan Malaysia ho no ba bi ana no so eno so humi ansi so Sa eno so nya chiwa wa che kora nansa na wo so say ya bada kama.
That's right.
Sa eno so bae. Ne nyina no sa ekom so ekoso.
That's right.
Enti sa ya de we eba na mo akohoa na nyame adom na no abrase. Na fofra san peja. Enti SARS ne peja ye no a eno so mo gro eno so call form no. Fofra san bae ne nyina ye bo ne video. SARS ko ba sa maka Hong Kong ne Taiwan no ko ne ba no ene koso. Ano Brazil na ba ku peja wo Brazil omo ka ne Zika. Zika no omo chese obewa abofra na ne tiki. Yes, as a tomatoes. Na wo mo se e ka abofra no oyem. Eno so ye san yade ene ye bisa se se menyim. Na yade na kameba no ewo
me yemu a. Eye dating ko saa obi wa bonte.
Asem no. Omo nka bi nkyira ye. Oh, odwene ho a
because we enam mfnamam
dabi. Yare na ka abofra no omame yemu. Omame na yare na nka no. Abofra no ena yare na ka no. Zika. America force shase o Brazil. Eno mo tu kan ko ho no akofa biaba. Enti onye mo ayese wokọ ni ehwa abofra nse ni tiri ho tesai. Na fe ye shase ma ne duro. Eno so no aba mo akoho ene no nyame adom akofem.
That's right.
Enti won se Yesu ka se san ya de beba no akoso a ebi ni nam ayi Philippines o mo fra ni dengue fever. Eno so yesi ntontom. Emen so eno so no ya bobo bia pane okromo ti se de abeya akoya pane sem. Eno bi enesi ho ya bobo bia pane from dengue fever eno so ekum. Na eno so kawa wo hu fifire ka obi a ne se wo de ama no. Sa eno so mo akoa eno so nyame adom ano abrase kakra entu ye de asentu yi nanso so ewo ho nyame no buru no nti afei ene ka ye ka ne say HIV. Say HIV no ma me no man so say 40 years na fie aduanan ni. Yenya na duru. So ho. Na wo mu nyina no kire se Kristo kan se ebesisi miaye. Na esisa no na emo kire. Oho. Enti aba ma se no di aba se ye COVID-19. Na no ye bebo ho video aka no na ye de hwie yasemka.
Okay. Production, Mestre, movable videos are akano area my videos 10 to 12. Na yemfensuya.
In a matter of days, Dr. Li Wenliang went from treating patients to becoming one. The 34-year-old ophthalmologist diagnosed Saturday with the Wuhan coronavirus, dying less than a week later in the same hospital in which he worked. But if action had been taken when he and others started sounding alarms, the severity of the outbreak might have been understood sooner. Struggling to communicate, Lee spoke with CNN briefly by phone on January 31st. You could hear the hospital machines pulsing in the background. It was back in late December when Lee first warned friends on WeChat about a SARS-like disease going around. Lee sent a group message saying that a test result from a patient quarantined at the hospital where he worked showed a patient had a coronavirus. But hours after hitting send, Wuhan city health officials tracked Lee down, questioning where he got the information. Within days, they closed the suspected source of the virus, this seafood market, and they announced the outbreak. But instead of being praised, Lee got a call from Wuhan City Police. With Lee coughing too much and breathing too poorly to speak by phone, we asked Lee by text, "How did you feel when this happened?" "I felt a little afraid I would be detained, afraid my family would worry," Lee responded. He agreed to sign this document, admitting to spreading rumors online and severely disrupting social order. It reads, "We want you to cooperate with the police and listen to our reminder and stop the illegal act. Can you do that?" Lee answered, "Yes, I can." In the weeks that followed, the Wuhan Municipal Health Commission maintained that there was no obvious evidence for human-to-human transmission, no infection of healthcare workers, and that the outbreak was, in their words, preventable and controllable. And with that, the people of Wuhan continued about their normal lives. Then came a sudden jump in infections. China's central government took over, scrambling to contain a spreading virus with a...
My profound honor to address the United Nations General Assembly, 75 years after the end of World War II and the founding of the United Nations. We are once again engaged in a great global struggle. We have waged a fierce battle against the invisible enemy, the China virus, which has claimed countless lives in 188 countries. In the United States, we launched the most aggressive mobilization since the Second World War. We rapidly produced a record supply of ventilators, creating a surplus that allowed us to share them with friends and partners all around the globe. We pioneered life-saving treatments, reducing our fatality rate 85% since April. Thanks to our efforts, 3 vaccines are in the final stage of clinical trials. We are mass producing them in advance so they can be delivered immediately upon arrival. We will distribute a vaccine. We will defeat the virus. We will end the pandemic. And we will enter a new era of unprecedented prosperity, cooperation, and peace. As we pursue this bright future, we must hold accountable the nation which unleashed this plague onto the world, China. In the earliest days of the virus, China locked down travel domestically while allowing flights to leave China and infect the world. China condemned my travel ban on their country, even as they canceled domestic flights and locked citizens in their homes. The Chinese government and the World Health Organization, which is virtually controlled by China, falsely declared that there was no evidence of human-to-human transmission. Later, they falsely said people without symptoms would.
Now, one very rare positive effect of the past few months has been on the environment. The biggest ever reduction in the volume of carbon dioxide released into the world's atmosphere has been recorded since March. At the height of the lockdown, scientists discovered that daily emissions around the world dropped by more than 17%. The biggest fall was in China, which saw a drop in emissions of 24%. Here in the UK, the reduction was 13%. But scientists are warning that this extreme reduction, as they call it, in greenhouse gas emissions is likely to be temporary, as our science editor David Schuckman explains.
All over the world, some stunning transformations. From choked streets in India becoming calmer and easier to breathe in, to the most famous landmark in China suddenly looking clearer, to the centre of Paris, often polluted, now quieter and cleaner. The fight against the virus has slowed down many economies at huge cost, but it's also done wonders for the air and for the carbon emissions that are heating up the planet. The drop in traffic is a major part of that, here in the UK and globally. Lower demand for electricity has also made a difference, along with the grounding of planes. Fewer flights means less carbon released into the air. It's a pattern seen around the world. The lighter the shade here, the bigger the decline in emissions. In some countries, up again.
From your sign, Emma Kwaba Bio, you be evangelist or Amana to the boss. I check videos I crochet, say, no, the last videos I actually, Nemo and son, and Sabe. Do know a beda if you motumu, ye motumi, ana a boy, ma do no to me a day. In your Makubia Darman, no so yas, and did me de a boa council. To become a honoria said I can say, Ama time heba mecha, Dr. Kennedy, Eda, one ano. Na time heba mecha na ye malaria dra. Se oko ye so moja hwe ne ka che se wanya malaria e mane how bo modena ne pe pharmacy shop na drugstore bia e ben wo ne koje time herbal mixture time ne TIME edura Food and Drugs Authority e de stamp si so se itu malaria se e de man unya bia e ade e bebo papa pa yie enu achi no so e bia wo ye obi a wo nan africhi ana abu ana stroke e di unya wo kasa no ano chechia ana wo hun senchire ni bi wo reading mo chire so wo yanya stroke for nature Greenfield Scientific Herbal Clinic e wo nwa adegon last stop hono mo abunso msambo kese esi hono or ambulance service simple untimi stroke no bubu oguo untimi nante a ofra ombema ambulance ababe faw enu ye Greenfield Scientific Herbal Clinic Dr. Bright Okon eda wona no obebo papa pa yi Givers Herbal Center so the Givers P capsules ne Givers Co capsules na ababe so yasene sebe wo ye bema na wa ye mre wo mpam se bia wo nhia yesu ntem to a masturbation am why mra odru e give us P capsules and I give us co capsules e ade a ebeboa na di wagina mu papa manso herbal clinic opawo waware awo na twa kwakire enye da bia na wo na ye de sha baafu da kumbu na bu abaafu na ko strike say yente ase se bibia na mo de ahye enti mesro se opawo na bibi ne ha oba no ana be ma no for wani kire manso herbal clinic ya de obeboa papa yie enu achi no so wo ya ade wo stroke ene kronkro ya rebia say diabetes na nkeka ho no okomanso herbal clinic wo de hama fruits and vegetables ebetelete edi amount ono so hwe ne kira kwan a fadama chief imam street ne so hwa ehon na manso herbal clinic ewo osan so onkrabata bebre bi oteshi no ne ade ohwehwe wo ne kira kwan a oyade a won so ebebo papa yi enyumuku nan na so ya sna itimidi dwumadi eba wakwan so enti nyame enhira won papa evangelist yakwa ko videos
yes
na messages de menya bebre ni bi anika
okay all right oh e kan say ye to Nyankopon bufu adan Nyankopon bufu ye to ni mra
okay
ye no Nyankopon ti yi a na say ye tie nasem.
That's right.
One only ti yi
na che say no de nhira na waka ni nyina e baba ya akwam
sa na tie
ne mum se ye to na mra no de a ene no me no ene beba
sa no kan enti sa san ya de ya Ebola Zika hwan di na aboni na de eye aswodin ehwa so twen kakra mobrohu fremu na eba no mami sa se video twa to no so say Christopher e free kojo betebre so Church of Christ when they kan ti say 3 na coaches aka de akiri
okay
Nyankopon mra de abo asanuam na ye de mamosi na dispensationalists na Abraham mra ni ho de de shadomase homeda ninti okatre Church of Christ ni say Bible say nsa wade o say ojitum ye modwaman
that's right
okatre Pentecost ni say Bible say ye nkotobo so obasan ojitum onim anyone katro say apamdada kwa kan say ye ni homeda so omo nsema be pi
babri ne kuro
yes na Church of Christ was say homeda de twa na no aye mra mo de ye ntimi ne so fine aye den na brofo bia ba wiase na ye kan lockdown now omwanka kase ye lock wiase down no ewiem ate hwan enwusia nka ye home edim from aboni ewura ye mo ma ya de no say wo say nyina efiri ho ene omutimi de homeda oh omo ya me mobo na Nyankopon so na betwe yaso look wo mo kire mo say ye de dako biara ye de dako si wo na otwe bia mu ehome na yam spark car plane 2 ship and fire poso abobo ya ne sa anyoma na ntu a
companies and as industries
yes companies industries ahodo anyeduma na otwe bia ye de dako si ho a afe no ye be save 20% of carbon emissions e ko bi ye be save 20% eno ya afe she said a phrase of the industrial revolution by wiase far back in the 1880s
as you see ababidu fourth
ababidu babe yedru senka Church of Christ from for the by 1906 senka Christopher benkanisa e de Onyankopon homeda so nanka na otwe bia ye de homeda ba ko e home a kan nanyi ne se wiase babe moduri argument
that's right
omon fra message mra said the make no wrong ene so omo push say afa yefa coincidence on emba home na asebe plan ye bemba so akire but ene last video me share boss a video no me de bom kokko pese me sand ababiem na edru home da ne coincidence so ye de akira asemu just we are say ayenya atwom omo prove omo hypocrisy to the highest order corona ebeba ma me no a odi kan enya yade de call China aye to din say corona no wono kono de ono so yare no de call
that's right
and doctor whom I mean doctor ne say wo yare
ye diagnose you no yare a wo yare ne virus bi a frɛ no
corona enti wo yare say yade no say ne videos bebre aba ye say bi mu na atena say no mo yare na ba wiase oba ba ko pe
ene starte wono
ho
enso ne conspiracy be bring na microphone say dan na Bill Gates na ye na ene ye di apreto
sa Oso mami China no doctor no a onu hwa mam no hu se no yare na wanya na ye san yade a onu mpo bi na no kan no China ban se yanchi no tese wawu yare no ko papa ni bi enji China ban bo modern se ka yade no o kan hye krom ho na President Trump o kan se China hu se sa yade ye san yade no o mo anka no China no or lockdown on ukrum uno ko lockdown ko no makwa ma print to free ukrum e kwa ma no ni nti print bia bia no de
so kakra no akoche
and am Trump before friend say Chinese
virus that's right
nti person be chere ya say ya say Zika ba Ebola ba say no ya to din corona so say ese so man ba
They say they drew Omicron. Say ba ko bi kura nso asaba.
Enko somra say ba ko say person say fan say data chromosome dan yo. Edin ye beba.
That's right.
Na ne nyina kire say onyankopon bofu. E na say e ba sa so kakran ti bi say Christopher ntia say me pa mo chew. Nyankopon o say die ye dua no eno ani betwa.
That's right.
Eno ani ye twai. Tu dua so den a betwa so den. Thank you.
Adofnom ye the program no beba na we habit ma me hwese metima from messages be se me you bia de tie ne se enne wiase atimi akwapam se be matimi ware bema oba atimi ware oba ade ne begina so de aka kire wiase se saade wi amo ye enye ti nyame asem nyame mra nsem a eka se krono adwaman hwan ye no enne asori timi sori gina eka se nyame mra no enye dwuma biu ye tuagu ne twase nyame da ne ho adi de kire se ade amo ye no mani nso na omasa hatemu nieme bank kakra se de be ya ye ni beba ye ho so because kai Proverbs chapter 28 verse 4 tro na ya wakan wo se dodo a eja onyankopon mra nsem no wo mu yi nnebonyefo aye na saafo no nhuna temu na wo ne di mra nso no ene won di apere eno na ekoso ne mra no ho eni ho atwam yo nyame ne be kire mama share messages na kakra bi ne fadwumadi na mra na wie wo se I'm watching you live from Akropon. My name is Rich Obed. Mention my name on your program. Obed, mention your name on the program. Okay. Is Christ Jesus coming to save a denomination or saints who have prepared or preparing for the second coming? Is it your case that the object of worship, faith, is a church and not Christ? Read Romans chapter 10 verse 17, Hebrews 9 27 28, and then Acts 10 what will be brave. In the evangelist the obi ebisa wo no. I'll say hello. I'm Evans doing the listening from Koforidua. Good work. God bless you. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm saying kind message in internet. I say God bless you, man of God. You are really opening the eyes and minds of the world and disclosing the prophetic message that are hidden from the mere Christians and the world as a whole. May God continue to shower his blessing onto you so that you can always give us this wonderful teachings. Techi Isaac from Kintampo. Techi Nyamishra Bibri. And Air Force Base. Also an elder and a twa almost share program no. Air Force Nyame Inshra Papa. Some messages in the den ones who mushigums and once if you na could be obisa question bianca mepe. Or say, will all SDA members go to heaven? Will all those who worship on Sunday go to hell? Me pacho question we nkwa de ya no.
Christo say, monhwe me na monsua me.
That's right.
Sana Paul so kai, monhwe me na monsua.
1 Corinthians 11:1.
Yes, say the mission of Christo ho. Tina me kan say, enkyerɛkyerɛ a SD for kuta no. So wo de san kyerɛkyerɛ no so a kwan bia so wo bɛsɛ Christo.
Because Jesu di.
Yes.
Di nemra nsɛm so. Christo ankasa nso kan the same thing. O dɔme a. Di mahyɛdeɛ so.
Aye.
Ɛna ahyɛdeɛ no yɛ du. Ɛnya nkono. Nti sɛ ofa bi na agya bi dia.
Oh. Ye Jesu di first. Na afa ye di nemra nsɛm so. Ye ni nemra nsɛm so sɛ di konya nkwa. Ɛno de ni hɔ.
Dabi.
Yesu betran mu. Na afa no wa kyerɛkyerɛ mo di nemra nsɛm so. Yesu
wa ma wa hoden ama de di nemra nsɛm so.
Ɛno ne asɛm no. Enti me pam kyɛw hwɛ. Ɛbra wo ne kan nipa no wo sere no so no. Sɛ ye de biribi si hɔ sɛ ɛno na ɔmo nhwɛ. Ɛbra osuo no bɛba no adaka ne so ase munkom. Nya enya ne Nyankopɔn ɔde biribi si hɔ sɛ wei ɛna fo ne hwɛ. Na me ka kyerɛ won sɛ ye brɛ mu ne. Esi asafo na esi hɔ. Wura mu. Na di Nyankopɔn.
Yeah, say evangelist am say ye brɛ no aye be. Adofnom so person for evangelist. Na wo question bia person obisa no a. The number is 055 35 74 933. Nyame nhyira. Yedamase.